there, welcome back to another episode from B&E Reptiles. Today we are going to do something a little bit different. We are going to discuss my top picks for the best beginner snake. So welcome to my orange table talk. So yeah, hang out, and after the intro we'll get started. Everybody. So like I was telling you, we're going to talk about my top picks for the best beginner snakes. I am not going to present them in any order, first to fourth, whatever. We're going to talk about them one at a time. So the first one I have here is a ball python. Her name is Cleopatra, and fun fact, this is the only snake that my husband Billy had when we first got together. So the rest of our collection that we have, we got together. I'm going to tell you a little bit of an embarrassing story. Before I knew anything about snakes, I thought these were called bald pythons, like B-A-L-D. But they're not. It's just ball, B-A-L-L. And that is because 9 times out of 10, she is usually in a ball. Her scientific name is Python regis, or royal python, and one of the ways she got this name is from a pretty well-known lady named Cleopatra. She used to wear them around her wrist as bracelets and kind of as a sign of intimidation. I mean, if anybody knows anything about ball pythons, they're not going to be very intimidated, but whatever makes her happy. Well, made her happy. And if you know anything about Cleopatra, she did actually commit suicide, or so they think, by a snake bite. And no, it was not a ball python who did it. It was actually an asp, which is A-S-P. So a little bit of information about Cleopatra here. She is found in Western and Central Africa, and she hangs out in the grasslands and the shrublands. They're really not endangered in the wild. They are hunted for their meat and international pet trade, which kind of is silly to me, because once you get into this whole reptile world, which is a very, very big world and very interesting, you will see that the majority of snakes you will find are usually ball pythons. And this is what a normal ball python looks like. She is this color, so she can blend in with her surroundings in the wild. But once you start looking into ball pythons, you will realize there are a ton of different morphs. Really too many to count. It's amazing. So I'm really confused why they are still hunted in the wild for the international pet trade, but so be it. When these guys are little, and I'm gonna go talk about captivity, or keeping them in captivity now, they can have a lifespan up to 20, 30 years, depending on, you know, one, the individual snake and how well it is kept. When they're babies, they eat little pinkies or mice, and they will gradually get larger and eat rats. So they will max out probably about this length right here. But I would say a male could go to 2 to 3 feet, whereas a female is going to go about 3 to 5. And if you see a 5 foot, it's going to be a massive ball python. So, feeding wise, when you're feeding the babies, they eat every 5 to 7 days, whereas an adult eats about every 2 weeks. These guys, they're about 20 bucks, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot of responsibility that goes along with it. So if you have $20, should you go out and buy a ball python just for the fun of it? No. If you are a serious person who wants to get into snakes, this would be a good option. The only bad thing about ball pythons is they're kind of boring. I mean, if you want a lot of activity and be able to watch and like have them interact with you, not like, hey, go fetch, obviously, but like if you want to see them moving around in their cage and watching you go around the room kind of thing, this is not really the snake for you. Like I said at the beginning, 9 times out of 10, she is in a ball position, and that's where she likes to be. That is where she goes in her defense stance, is just to ball up and hide her head. So a little elaboration on that. As far as food, we do not feed live unless we absolutely have to. And if you do feed live, then you need to stay and watch. Rats are very vicious, is a good word. They can actually do more damage to the snake than the snake could them if the snake is not in the mood to eat. So if you look, let me find her spot. So she was a rescue, like the majority of our snakes are. And just, there it is. Okay. So if you look right there, she has a little scar. So we're thinking probably what happened was whoever had her to begin with was probably doing a live feeding and didn't pay attention, and the rat got a hold of her. So luckily all she got was a little scar. But we've seen where it can kill a snake or hurt them so bad that there's no return. So if you feed live, then you just need to be very careful. Another funny story about myself. I've only been bitten by a couple different snakes, like once or twice here or there, and it's never been anything major. And the first time I was ever bitten was by a ball python. Was it this ball python? No. Because me and that ball python, we don't really have a relationship anymore because she bit me twice. So I just kind of, yeah, no. And my husband thought it was the most hilarious thing ever because, as we've talked about, ball pythons are like pet rocks. So he thought it was hilarious that I got my first snake bite from a pet rock. So, yeah. There's some information about ball pythons. All right, I am now back here with a black rat snake or an eastern rat snake. I'm going to try to say her scientific name, which is Pantherophis alleganius. And I'm sure I butchered that. So I want to give a shout out because, as most of you know, I'm a teacher and I really miss my students. And I am in need of my buddy Aiden, who helps me say all the words that I struggle with. So I'm missing you right now, Aiden. All right, so like I said, she is a black rat snake, but obviously she's not black. She is albino and also hypomelanistic. That is just a really fancy way of saying she lacks the black pigments in her skin, and it brings out the red. So she is a rescue. Her former owners passed away, and we have a really good friend, Zach D'Alessio, who used to run a rescue. And once I laid eyes on her, I fell in love. So my husband got her for me. In the wild, she obviously would not survive. She would be picked off very quickly because she obviously would stand out like a sore thumb. she lacks the ability to blend in with her surroundings, and that's why you don't see many albinos in the wild. So in the wild, they do a thing called brumate, which is kind of like a reptile hibernation. So basically their metabolism just slows down to the point where they don't need to eat anything. If you were keeping one as a pet or as a friend, whatever, you have the option of brumating, where you could put them in a cooler temperature area and they can brumate, and it kind of stimulates them to try to reproduce or want to reproduce in the spring when they wake up, but you don't have to. These guys eat rats. Some of y'all probably have these fellas around your house, and hopefully most of you know to leave them there. They are good snakes to have around. They eat rodents that carry fleas. So if you have dogs or cats, you know, you obviously don't want them to have fleas, so this is a good helper. Let's see. Henrietta is a female, so she's a little bit on the larger side. She is probably about maxed out though, where she's at. Girls can get up to about 5 or 6 feet, and boys are gonna be a little bit smaller. That's how you see it in the snake world. Girls are always bigger, boys are always smaller. In the wild, the babies are mistaken a lot of times for copperheads because they are this light grayish color with black or dark brown spots or blotches on them, and so it confuses a lot of people. They lose those spots and just stick with the black part of it for the most part. You usually don't have any issues trying to get them to eat. Whereas the ball pythons that I showed you a minute ago, sometimes when they're younger, they are a little skittish of food sometimes, or just stop eating for no reason. And that can be very stressful to you because you're like, oh my goodness, my snake's not eating. And while these guys are younger, or when they're younger, they can be a bit nippy. So that's kind of a negative. And they like to move. So if you're wanting something that's just going to chill with you and sit there in your hands and not roam around, these guys are probably not for you, just because they do enjoy locomotion. So that's a little bit about Henrietta, our black rat snake. All right, everybody, this is my friend Gunter. He is a ghost corn snake. His scientific name is Pantherphus guttatus. Probably did not pronounce that correctly at all, but luckily for you, we know how to put the spelling in the video now. And if you notice, his first name, the first part of his name, which is his genus, is the same as the rat snake. So that means they are somewhat related. He is a lot like the rat snake. He is just a smaller bodied snake. He does like to move around a lot. What else about him? If you notice his belly, it does have the checkerboard pattern. Sorry about that. We've cleaned up the poop situation now. As I was saying before he rudely interrupted me, if you look at his belly, he still has that checkerboard pattern that corn snakes are known for. If this was a wild corn snake, he would be an orange, reddish, black mixture. It's really pretty. And he would still have the checkerboards. So these guys are about 30 bucks, which once again, if you have 30 bucks, should you go run out and buy a corn snake? No, you shouldn't. So as I was telling you, I've been bit a couple different times by a couple different snakes. And one of them was by this guy. So I started a reptile club when I worked at my previous school, and I had to take, well, I didn't have to, but I did. I took an animal every Friday and would talk about it with the students that was in the reptile club. And one morning I was running super late, and he's usually my go-to because he's such a good docile animal. But not that morning. He was asleep, and if you can imagine you being asleep in your bed and all of a sudden somebody comes and tries to pick you up, you're gonna freak out a little bit. I would. And that's exactly what happened to him. But I did not know he was asleep because, fun fact, snakes do not have eyelids. So when they're asleep, they look like they're awake. So he did what is called tagging. He tagged me, which is just a little bitty bite saying, hey, I'm very uncomfortable and I don't appreciate what you're doing right now. Back off or it's gonna get a lot worse. So I don't know if you consider that a bite or not, but it was sort of kind of like one. These guys are really good eaters as well. When they're small, they start out with mice and they work their way up to rats. They're harmless, so if you see one in the wild, just leave it be. Okay, so that was just some information about my friend Gunter, who, by the way, is also a rescue and was given to us because his previous owner left him. So, thanks for learning about Gunter. All right, everyone, this is Porky. He is a Western Hognose, and if you notice, I did not introduce him as my friend. He actually hates me with the holy passion for some reason. I have never done anything wrong to this snake, but he's always disliked me. So if you notice his stance right now, he's a little just on edge. But that's okay, because I can point out the fact that his head, if you notice, he is flattening it out. And that is so he will look like he is a big and bad snake. These guys are actually rear fang venomous. So that means, okay, a good way to explain it and try to imagine it is if your back teeth were fangs, okay? So you have to imagine how much of my arm you would have to get in your mouth before you were able to utilize those fangs. So obviously that's not going to happen between me and him. Also, it's not really a venom. It is more of a mild toxin, and it is actually evolved over time to be specific to small frogs and newts and different little animals like that. Now, if he was to bite me, I would not react because of the venom necessarily. I could possibly be allergic to him. So it's nothing to be afraid of. They are not usually biters. He is a diva, and this is known as the diva of the snake world. He headbutts. Yes, headbutts. And he's headbutted me numerous times. If you can look at his nose, that is called a rostrum. If you notice how it's pointed up. He uses this to dig around the leaf litter, his bedding. He actually creates quite nice little tunnels. I say this is one of the good beginner snakes because they're just interesting, because not that you can feel them over the video obviously, but they have a different feel than most snakes. It's actually called a killed scale, and it sort of reminds you of sandpaper. So I just think that's neat. And of course his nose, because he's a hog nose, so hence the name Porky. In the western North Carolina region where we're at, we don't actually have western hognoses here. We do, however, have eastern and southern hognoses. The southern hognose around here is actually protected by law, so you cannot kill them. If you do, you will be in trouble. Not that you should kill any snake. All right, so Porky, like I said, he's just a very interesting character. I think they're decent beginner snakes. Most of them are very you can handle them. Obviously not me and this guy, because he hates my soul, but actually he enjoys being with my husband, and so Billy has a easy time with him. Yeah, thank you for learning about Porky and his sassy self. All right, thank y'all so much for joining me and listening to me ramble on about some good beginner snakes. So it's time to let you know what my pick is for the best beginner snake. All right, so my pick is the corn snake. I really like the fact that he is very docile. They're kind of reluctant to bite. If they do decide to do that, then it's usually a little tag just to let you know they're uncomfortable. This is about their max size, so they're not a huge snake. They do like to move around, which I like for my animals to be interactive with me. As you can tell by, well, he's not paying attention to me anymore. My dragon has been keeping an eye on me this whole time. I enjoy when the animals like to watch you and be inquisitive and see what you're doing. So those are the reasons that I would personally choose a corn snake for the best beginning snake. The ball pythons would probably come in second. They are fairly easy to take care of. Kind of a pain to try to get to eat. It kind of stresses you out. If you decide to go get a snake, which we encourage because, you know, they're awesome pets and they get a lot of slack. Especially if you have children who have allergies. A lot of kids are allergic to cat dander and dog dander and gerbil and hamster dander. Obviously, if you have scales, you're not going to have any dander. So that's one reason that I advocate so much for reptiles as well, is because they are awesome pets. Of course, you're going to have your bad seeds just like you would in any animal. But for the most part, kids absolutely love animals like this, and you need to make sure to do your research. Don't just go out, like I said, willy-nilly buying stuff. And of course, if you have any questions or if you need any tips or information on how to care for any of these animals, please leave us a comment and we can do a more in-depth video on how to actually house and care for these guys. But yeah, so since y'all don't get to see Lucy today because she had to go get some shots and she's not feeling up to it, y'all will actually get to see some bloopers, I believe, from me doing this. So thank y'all so much for joining us. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share this wonderful YouTube channel that we have created. And thank y'all again for being so nice to us and being so supportive. We really, really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week. Thanks. But her scientific name is
Outtakes.
He's awful friendly. God. Hello, everybody. Nope, don't like that at all. What else about him? If you notice his belly, it does have the checkerboard pattern. And that, my friends, is a nice, lovely poop. Calm down. You ready? All right, everyone.